I thought it was just another quiet night shift. But then I heard the footsteps, saw the shadow, and realized the hospital wasn't empty. Something was lurking in the darkness, watching me. Echoes in the abandoned hospital. My terrifying night shift encounter. I had been a security guard for almost 20 years, but nothing could have prepared me for the eerie silence of the old, abandoned hospital on the outskirts of town. The building, once a bustling hub of life and healing, had been closed for over a decade, its walls now crumbling and covered in ivy. Most of the locals avoided it, claiming it was haunted, but I didn't believe in ghosts. I took the job because it was quiet, the pay was decent, and I didn't mind being alone. The first few nights were uneventful. The only sounds I heard were the distant hum of the city, the occasional creak of the building settling, and the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. I would make my rounds, walking the long, dimly lit corridors, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The hospital's rooms were empty, the beds long removed, and the medical equipment left behind was covered in a thick layer of dust. But then, about a week into the job, things began to change. It started with the footsteps. I was on the third floor, checking the old surgery wing, when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing down the hall. At first, I thought it might be an animal, a raccoon or a stray cat that had wandered inside, but the footsteps were too deliberate, too heavy. They sounded like someone was wearing boots, just like mine. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest, and strained to listen. The footsteps stopped as soon as I did. I shone my flashlight down the hallway, but it was empty. Nothing but peeling wallpaper and broken tiles. Slowly, I started walking again, and after a few steps, the footsteps resumed, this time closer. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing down the empty corridor. There was no response, just the sound of my own breathing and the pounding of my heart. I turned around quickly, shining my light behind me, but there was nothing there. The footsteps stopped again. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I was a seasoned guard, and I wasn't about to let some old building get the best of me. I finished my rounds that night without incident, but the footsteps stayed with me, lingering in my mind like a bad dream. The next night, things escalated. I was on the second floor, near the old maternity ward, when I noticed something strange. One of the doors, which I was certain had been closed and locked, was now slightly ajar. I frowned, shining my flashlight into the room. It was empty, of course, just an old, dusty room with a cracked window and peeling paint. But as I stepped inside to check it out, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The dust on the floor had been disturbed, as if someone had walked through it recently. I could see clear footprints leading from the door to the far wall, where they abruptly stopped. My hand tightened on my flashlight, my skin prickling with fear. I had been the only one in the building for hours. There was no way anyone could have gotten in without me knowing. I quickly backed out of the room, slamming the door shut behind me. I checked every floor that night, making sure every door was locked, every window secured. But as I made my way back to my station, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. Over the next few nights, the disturbances grew more frequent. Doors that had been locked were found open, objects were moved, and the footsteps followed me wherever I went. One night, I found a wheelchair in the middle of the hallway, its wheels still spinning as if it had just been pushed. Another night, I discovered a light on in one of the rooms, a light that shouldn't have been working, given that the building had no power. I started to lose sleep. I would wake up in a cold sweat, the sound of footsteps echoing in my mind. I became jumpy, nervous, constantly looking over my shoulder. I even started to doubt my sanity. Maybe I was imagining things I told myself. Maybe the isolation was getting to me, but deep down, I knew it was more than that. Something was wrong with the hospital, something that didn't want me there. One night, as I was making my rounds, I heard a door slam behind me. I turned around, my heart racing, and saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway. It was dark, but I could just make out the shape of a person, tall, thin, and unmoving. "Who's there?" I called out, but the figure didn't respond. It just stood there, staring at me, its face hidden in the shadows. My hand shook as I raised my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. But when the light fell on the figure, it vanished. There was nothing there, no one standing in the hallway, no sound, nothing. I backed away, my heart hammering in my chest. I didn't finish my rounds that night. Instead, I returned to my station, locked the door, and sat with my back to the wall, my eyes fixed on the door. The footsteps didn't follow me that night, but I could still hear them, faint and distant, echoing through the empty hallways of the old hospital. I didn't return to work after that. I quit the next day, leaving the keys on the desk without a word. The hospital remains abandoned, its hallways still haunted by the echoes of the past. And me? I never talk about what happened during those long, lonely nights at the old hospital, but sometimes, late at night, I wake up in a cold sweat, the sound of footsteps echoing in my ears.